Is Mr. Gilbert in the house, y'all? Come on down, Mr. Gilbert. Let's give it up for Mr. Al Gilbert.
So I don't know how this is going to work. I think I'm going to hold it because I get excited sometimes and start moving around. So I might do that. And I'm kind of overwhelmed because of all the beautiful and powerful, committed people who spoke today and who are doing this important work. To even think that you'd be acting like I'm the keynote or I'm the person who's got something to say. So I'm not as smart as many of the people here. And that helps me in some ways because I recognize my limitations. And at the same time, though, I too have a dream. Wasn't that a beautiful reading that the Rev did earlier? Wow. I like the fact that he just owned it. He just did it. Like it was his to do. I was like, wow. So I am an emotional person, so forgive me if that shows up at times. I appreciate that. So thank you, Rich Minds. Thank you, Graham. Go ahead. She's going to get the charger for the slideshow. Okay. She's going to get the charger for the slideshow because the charger went bad. Okay. Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Graham. Thank you, all of the partners in Richmond, for inviting us to play with you in this important work. I'm hoping that we're working on the commitment now for us to be the fiscal sponsor for Rich Minds. And so while they wait for the charger, before we start throwing the slides, so I grew up in Cleveland, and it was a while ago. During the riots, and everything around us was burned down, and the police surrounded the ghetto. And matter of fact, they even shot holes through my jersey because I used to run track. And I turned a corner and they opened fire on me. So the blessing is that I didn't get seriously injured. I cried. I was shocked. I was running for my life. So when I grew up, there was Black Enterprise and Earl Graves' magazine. And I used to read it, and I used to wish that I could meet this brother, because if I could show him how incredible I was, and how driven I was, then my life would be like all of that, because I could show him who I really am. And that never happened. So I continued to work in environments throughout my career that weren't really supportive of me. And didn't have a vision for my success. So I just created my own and created my own path to success. So so I'm going to share some slides about what we've been able to do at Felton Institute, which used to be Family Service Agency in San Francisco. And it's now 133 years old. We changed the name about 12 years ago to Felton Institute, because there's a lot of family service agencies throughout California. There's all kinds, and we're all different. And I had a vision for what we wanted to do that didn't match the name. So we chose Felton Institute. Felton Institute, and the word institute for a reason. My background is I went to Ohio State, and my parents said they couldn't pay for college, so I ended up getting scholarships, sports scholarships, to go to the Ohio State. No. And then I went to grad school at Indiana, and again, it was the time of integration. So I was the first in the honors program. I was the first Black to do that. And then I came out here to California to escape the Midwest. And I don't think that people out here appreciate how blessed you are to be on the West Coast. I'm just saying. Okay, still waiting for the slides. So When we came out here, we've had a number of our own businesses, and we've started over 20 businesses, and that's my wife and I. Let me tell you about her real fast because we just celebrated our 50th year together this year. And she said, "I do," to me. And so I've spent my entire life trying to say thank you to her. So that means that we have fresh flowers in the house every day, that we live in a beautiful place, and she grew up very, very poor, so she doesn't need any of that, but she deserves so much more. So I do that. The reason why that's important is that being the emotional person that I am, that's the way I treat the people who work for me as well. So there's an opportunity that we have at Felton in that I look for a place that would hold me, appreciate, develop me, and I couldn't find it. So I decided to develop that place. So this is the place that you want to work. And it is the place that's going to be reflected in these slides that there they are, that we're going to be talking about. But I also feel like people who work for us have decided to spend that part of their life working along this vision and the work that we're doing. And then it's my job to say thank you. So I have extremely dedicated people working for us, and I'll talk about one or two real fast. So Dr. Joanna Quiros, who is our Director of Children, Youth, and Family. She's been with Felton for 25 years, and I've only been there for 20 years. But when I got there, she was an administrative clerk, and now she is our Director of Children, Youth, and Family Division, about $20 million worth of business, and she probably has about 250 staff that work for her. She was a pregnant teen in our teenage parenting program. So she was a 16-year-old mom. So she's been there for 25 years, and she's only 42 years old. And she's Dr. Quiros now, and she runs a big-ass division, and we've got some of the most incredible programs that we've done, and I'm really excited about that because I'm the one who raised her in the business space to do this incredible work. But we've got a lot of success stories in our organization because we've got leaders with lived experiences and all of that working in the organization. So when I look at my organization, I look at people who are way more brilliant than I am, way more dedicated than I am, know the work deeper than I do, and my job is to build business. That's what I've dedicated myself to because that's what I couldn't understand, why we in the inner city Black community had no businesses. You know, I think about the difference between Antioch, where we're going to do a new program soon, and Oakland is that you don't even have an In-N-Out burger in Oakland. You don't have Chipotle. No, we have Chipotle. We don't have, what's that thing, Chick-fil-A. And there's a whole bunch of businesses that only position themselves outside of your communities, but so that the community is always this desert of services and opportunity, and that's what makes it hurt so much to be inside of those communities. So our job, my job, is to figure out how to build successful business. And what's important for me is that our mission is to drive positive and sustainable community-led change where all have equitable access to innovation, high-quality, evidence-informed service. I'm reading these because you'll see as we go along that is the foundation for what we do. Our mission, rooted in equity, Felton Institute transforms the quality of life and promotes social justice to accelerate community-led change. So I have an issue because you walk past somebody who's homeless or poor and you give them $1, $5, or $10. And they're excited, you feel good about what you just did. And what I know to be true, they're still homeless, they're still mentally ill, and they're still on that street begging, and that wasn't the answer. I'm not saying that they didn't appreciate the money in the minute, because I got a lot of people who I do that too, and they do appreciate, they recognize you, they give you all kinds of love, but that's not the answer. So I feel like our job is to create movement. It's not enough that we serve homeless people or we serve people who are mentally ill. It's not enough. You got to create movement. They don't deserve to live like that. So you've got to create movement. One of the things that Felton does is that we provide services from birth to end of life. And we have about 8 different divisions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've added 1 or 2 since then because I'm launching a technical assistance division, and we got some other divisions out there. But when I got to Felton, they were going bankrupt. And they hired me as a turnaround consultant to help them save Felton Institute after 120 years of service. My background, worked at Coopers & Lybrand, PricewaterhouseCoopers. I have a master's in entrepreneurship, taxation, private sector accounting. I didn't come into the nonprofit work. I came into the for-profit side. I was the head of an international reporting group for Bank of America after I left Coopers, and then I went in and started doing my own firm. And in my own firm, we worked with Cinta Oil, Crown Zellerbach, Bechtel, a whole bunch of corporations, and those were my clients. And we started working with some nonprofits too, but we started over 20 businesses for people. So I like to build businesses because, anyway. So when I got to Felton, they hired me to try and save the agency, and I was able to save the agency in 2 years. And we had 10 computers for 170 staff. We were an old-ass agency, just an old agency. 170 staff, 10 computers. And Bob Bennett, who I don't know if any of you know Bob Bennett, and Pat Bennett with RDA and Associates back then, he came as the interim CEO, and I gave him a report, said this is where we are, this is where we were, this is where we are, and this is where we need to go as a consultant. And he said, like, damn, this is an incredible report. Can I use it? I said, you use that however you want to. I don't know you, you don't know me. Use the report. But then he said, I want to do what you wrote up, but I can't do it without you. So will you join me? And I said, no, I'm tired. It was hard. We had to lay off 50 staff. We had to sell the corporate headquarters. We had to liquidate the endowment. We had to do all kinds of stuff to keep this organization out of bankruptcy. Dirty, nasty work, which is consulting work. I got it. But I was ready to move on. And he was like, no, let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. So we talked a long time about what a community-based organization should do and could do. So we decided that as a community-based organization, we wanted to build one that was committed to evidence-based practices, and that we wanted to have data to be able to demonstrate the outcomes. And we felt like in the nonprofit space, everybody goes in front of city council with 2 or 3 families who say, these people have saved my life. And I felt like corporations talk differently. They talk with all this data and with all this other stuff that they do. And we were trying to figure out what it would take for us to do that. And then we felt like the best voice to talk about what's needed in the community is actually the community voice. So we were sitting here saying, so then how do we establish a community voice that actually can be stronger than San Francisco State, Stanford, UC Berkeley? I mean, how do we get the chance to speak to power? And so we felt like we needed to build that. So we built a research, training, and evaluation division. We've had PCORI grants, we've had SAMHSA grants. We've committed ourselves to evidence-based practices. The staff didn't want to do it. I forced people to do it. They wouldn't do it. So what I did is I started giving people $2,000 if you learn motivational interviewing. And you passed and certified it, I gave you $2,000. And then I gave you $500 for your next evidence-based practice that you did. And then I gave you another $2,000 when you did CBT for psychosis. And when you did these other things, because what we did is we started doing the training. And we certified it, which meant that you had to go through all the work. And then we started getting pushback from the managers because now staff were focusing on getting these certificates and not doing the work. So it's one of those things where you keep wrestling with it, but I was determined to sit there and say, no, we're going to have a rigor. We're going to demonstrate the fact, because what I know to be true is when I walk into a room, it is never the case when I'm the minority in the room where people walk around and say, oh, that's the smartest guy in the room. Oh, he's the one who's the best person in the room. So I'm getting ready to say, First of all, we're not going to screw up. So I want us to be rigorous about everything that we do. We're not going to screw up. Secondarily, we're going to know our shit. Excuse me. We're going to know our stuff. And so anyway, so this is where we are with Felton. You got to go back a slide or two. Still go back. Let me see where we are. Okay, yep, your next slide. So, yep, that's perfect. So Felton was only in the city and county of San Francisco for all those years. The city and county of San Francisco was making some political decisions about how they were doing behavioral health that threatened the very fabric of everything that we did. So I decided that we weren't going to stay in San Francisco for our services. So as of now, we're in 7 counties, and the last county we just added was Contra Costa County for the work that we're doing. And Sonoma. Yeah, excuse me, and Sonoma. We added those 2 counties for the work that we're doing. We are mainly focused in San Francisco and Alameda. The reason why Contra Costa County was always in the target for what we were going to do, we are definitely going to be national, as you'll see in the next couple of years. We'll be all over the country. Before COVID, we had 8 international delegations the 3 years before COVID that came to visit Felton. From Singapore, from Hong Kong, from Great Britain. I was asked to speak in Milan. I was asked to speak in Singapore on the work that we were doing. None of that was a part of the plan. It was just that if we do really, really good work, then people are going to want to copy that model. That is the framework that we operate on, is that we have to have models that are rigorous, demonstrate how it produces outcomes, and then we basically can share it with other people, and then they can have the same kind of success without having to spend the time that we had to take to deliver it. So I grew up understanding that McDonald's was everywhere, because that was the only franchise that was in the hood, McDonald's and Burger King, but McDonald's. But it's the same all over the place. So I said, why can't we do that for how we deliver care and how we deliver success? And one more quick story. Marva Collins in Chicago used to be a sister who got all kinds of national recognition for having a school that graduated almost 100% of her kids into college. And I used to wonder, it didn't make sense to me. I'm sitting here in Cleveland. They're talking about her school. Chicago's got like 20 million people, and she's got a school of 200 people or 250. And she was in the White House, and they were talking about how wonderful her school was. And I was like, what the hell is wrong? Why don't you think everybody in Chicago wants the same thing? So if she's figured it out, then why isn't Chicago the best damn school district in the entire country? Because she's figured it out. She's right there. She's getting recognized on a national basis. It's not about me. It's not about Felton. It shouldn't have been about her. It should have been how we can get this kind of support to all of our kids. So that's why I'm model driven. I want models that can be replicated, and that's what we're building. Next slide. So it was a misrepresentation. This was for 18 months. So in reality, that's 90,000. We do 60,000 services a year. Now we do like 87,000. But when we did this slide, it was 60,000 people a year. Our data tells us that 79% of our clients are below poverty level. Mental health, we have 51 programs. We have over 65 programs now. Divisions, we have 6. As you know, we have about 8. Languages that we deliver services in 13 languages. 40% of our clients are female. 59% based on this time are ethnic minorities. And we have mental health services for the deaf population in Alameda County and in San Francisco County. We have people who are deaf, who are LCSWs and MFTs who deliver mental health services to the deaf population. We just got a call from Orange County because they want us to do those services down there. We're providing those services for Kaiser Corporation right now because who else has mental health services for the deaf population? That's one of our 13 languages that we provide the services in. But when you really think about things, and you think about things in thorough, because I have a tendency to be a little bit detail-oriented. When you bring in people into your organization who are deaf, every single staff meeting that you're in, you have to have a translator. Everything you do. So it's not like you do one thing and it doesn't impact everything. The good news about having services from birth to end of life, which used to frustrate me, because it means that we're not like the best child care provider. We're not the best TAY provider. We're not the best older adult provider, because we're providing services for everybody. So everybody always says, who is Felton? What is Felton? We're the largest outpatient mental health providers in San Francisco and now in a whole bunch of other places too. But we also had the best program for schizophrenia, for bipolar disorder. Our program was the one that led to the statewide funding for schizophrenia and bipolar. We're in 6 counties now with that program specifically, and it's the national model. But we did that. We literally built that program. We did partner with Stanford, UCSF, but it wasn't their program, it was our program. They just did some evaluation for us in that program. We done launched that. So the goal is let's do things that really matter. Let's figure out how to do it rigorously and how to replicate it. Next slide. So I need to talk about CERTSI real fast. I told you we needed data. We tried to go and find a data system to help us track data because we wanted to sit there and say, if we're doing something really important, we got to be able to tell the story. So how do you get the data? We couldn't find a data system for it. So Felton was the first company to build an electronic health record on the Salesforce.com platform. Now, I want you to hear this. We weren't the first nonprofit. We were the first company to build an electronic health record on the Salesforce.com platform because it was an open development platform, which means that we could build it the way we wanted to. So we did it. Mark Benioff talked about us when he did a presentation on the East Coast about that. When he built his software to deal with sales, that he didn't imagine it would be used for healthcare. In 2007, we got the Appy Award for having the best software program on the Salesforce.com platform. In 2011, they gave us a $200,000 Force for Change grant that they gave for us and 7 other organizations to launch the software and make it its own business. Out of all of those 8 companies, we're the only one who's still operating, and now we provide services to, next slide. That's more about how it works. Next slide. So these are our customers: Seneca, Tenderloin Neighborhood Development Corporation, Open House. There's a whole bunch of people who use our software to drive their organizations. It's cheap. It's available for your support as well. We don't make any money off of it, but we built it because we needed to be in 7 counties, all kinds of services, 67 programs that we run right now. We needed a way to track our data so we can demonstrate the effectiveness of the program that we do. So we created the software, and now a whole bunch of other CBOs are using it too. So now they have data, which is important. Next slide. This is how we use it for San Francisco Suicide Prevention, which is the suicide hotline in San Francisco, is a part of Felton. They became a part of Felton about 4 years ago. They were struggling after 40 years, and they were going out of business because they couldn't survive. And then we said, okay, we'll take you over, and we reinvented them and supported them in a way that allowed them to grow. And I'll give you an example, and then I'm going to move faster because I know we're going to run out of time. I'll give you an example of how you make the right decisions for the right reasons. Forget what the contract is, for the right reason. So when we took them over, they had 10 staff, and they relied on 200 volunteers to do 24/7 hotlines, emergency phone support for people who are suicidal. And it's a part of a national network. Every county has to have it. Every county in California has to have it. And we were making those responses. It didn't make sense to me because I felt like you were too dependent on volunteers. Their software systems were crashing. They were raising hundreds of thousands of dollars every year to try and meet their budget. They were still losing $100,000 a year. And Eve Meyer, who was a wonderful Jewish woman, had like the biggest, she raised like $400,000 a year, and she still couldn't break even with her budget. So when it came to Felton, I told the county is that you got to pay for this. And they were like, they hadn't increased their budget since 1992. They were paying $492,000. And I did a budget that said it took like $1.3 million to run this organization. So I said, you got to pay $1.3 million because when it left Eve and came to us, all those people who were donors were going to leave and act like now it's going to be run by us. And we were going to have a $500,000 deficit. So I said, no, county, you got to pay for this. So they told me, Grant Koufax, who was just stepped in as their behavioral health director, said, hey, you're right, Al, but I'm brand new. I'm not going to pay for this. And I said, okay, but you got to. And he said, no, we don't have to. We went to the supervisors. They gave us $100,000. And they said, okay, now you got $592,000. So what I did is I said, okay, I'm going to sign the contract. And in January, I'm shutting down the program. Because that's all you're paying for. You're only paying for half a year. They increased the budget to $1.3 million. And I said, thank you. And they said, why are you thanking us? You basically told, you the one that basically told us we had to do it. And I'm happy about that. Because you need to speak truth to people when you're doing the work. What happened was we got that contract. The first thing we did is redid all of the computer systems and stuff so that we could outsource it and we could have 30 staff instead of having 10 staff and 200 volunteers. 3 months later, COVID hit. So the way it worked is that all of the volunteers would come in on BART to this private location they don't tell people about. They're in a big bullpen area, and then they make all these calls, and they're answering all these things and talk to all these people because there's 8 different hotlines that come into San Francisco suicide. But during COVID, guess what happened? None of those people were getting on BART coming in there. Secondarily, they couldn't be in a room where they were all talking to each other. So we had set up a system that allowed us to triage those calls. So during COVID, the whole thing would have been shut down. But because it came to Felton, guess what? It continued to operate. At a time when it was needed more than ever before, it continued to operate. We did not miss a day. So making the right decision is important whatever you do, wherever you do it. So this is the system that we use to, because we have a data system, we've created a data system that allows us to track all these phone calls and what we do with everybody. And then 988 came. 988 is, instead of calling 911, call 988 and we'll send out behavioral health people. Guess what? They gave it to the hotlines that we run. So we have the 988 line. Now, They hired a contractor in the state of California to develop a data system that allow all these systems to talk to each other and all that. And they've got like a 3-year process where they're going to figure out what everybody does and meet with everybody. Our data system already has been developed, so we're doing it right now. Literally, it just launched, and we have a data system that tracks all the data. Everything that they're trying to do in this whole comprehensive system, we can do it right now. And we're going to be providing it to other other organizations that want to do it. What's important is that rollout for 988 is a national rollout, which means every single state in this country has to do the rollout. So I don't care whether the city and county of San Francisco uses it or not. I don't care whether Alameda County uses it or not, because I can sell it anywhere in the entire country. And that is why we grow. So somebody in our bio just said that we grew, since I took over 6.5 years ago, we went from 17 million, our all-time high after 125 years of operation. We've gone to 48 million in our budget. But we just had a budget meeting with our board because we had to redo the budget because we actually grew this year to 57 million. So we grew from 36 million to 57 million this year, 21 million in 1 year this year. And that doesn't, and we grew our staff, we hired 204 people last year. Now that's pretty important because I heard that Salesforce is laying off 10% of its workforce. Twitter just laid off 11,000 people. Meta just laid off a whole bunch of people in San Francisco. Google's doing the same, but we hired 204 people last year. That doesn't include 100 additional staff that we just added to our workforce. So sometimes when you just do the right thing, it works. Just do the right thing. Sometimes it works. Next slide. CBO capacity building, innovation and problem solving. So to me, innovation is really a different kind of a discussion. I have a heart. So first of all, let's all of us just recognize that we are not as good as most of the people who lived before us. And we can't act like we're the first ones discovering shit because we didn't discover no shit. They did everything that we want to do. They did. The Nation of Islam was doing everything that you're trying to do in enrichment right now a long time ago. So we're not new to this. We have privileges that our parents and grandparents and other people didn't have. And in many cases, that'll make us lazy. So don't buy in to watching all those football games. So first of all, I salute you because there's football games on TV right now and you're here. So I salute you for doing that work. But my expectation of what I do with my life. So my wife has lost her brother, sister, mom, dad. All of her relatives are dead. My brother, sister, mom died too. And I lost my mom and dad during COVID and all that. But my brother and sister have died many years ago and stuff. So I always wonder, why has God saved me? My answer is that because of what I do with my life. That's why I'm here. Secondary, I don't have fear. And why don't I have fear? Because I have all those saints who would never let me fail. So therefore, there's no reason for us to be afraid about damn thing. Just do the work because they're not bigger and stronger than the people who provide and support us. Next slide. So our technical assistance work, which is part of what we're doing with Rich Minds, right? Because what we had to do is we had to build this very elaborate system. We are the most rigorous agency in the entire city and county of San Francisco and probably most of these other places because we have systems and structures that nobody else has. So we can run all these systems. And here's what I've decided and what I recognize as a consultant is that many people in the CBO space are here because they care about people, are here because they've been trained to be clinicians, are here because they've been peers and have had to need the services, are here because family members have died or need the support and all that. So we're here because we're loving and we're caring people, but most people in this space have not been trained to be business people. So what I understand is that I'm not smart enough to be a freaking psychologist or a psychiatrist and all of that. I'm not. And I'm not smart enough to do a whole bunch of things, but I build business. And I say, you don't have to look at what I say, trust what I do. Look at what I do, I build business. So that's what we do. But what I also say is that because the QA director, quality assurance director for the city and county of San Francisco was my quality assurance director. And they took him from me. The person who was the second in command, she got taken by the city county of Santa Clara. to be their QA director down there. Our adult division director is now working in the city and county of San Francisco because they took my staff to do that. So I'm saying that for a reason, because we've increased staff compensation across our agency by over 30% for the entire workforce over the last 4 years. Everybody, at least 30%, which makes us one of the highest paid CBOs right now in this space. But not because Al's such a sweet guy. I do tell you, I like to say thank you. So I think that my staff deserve to be paid whatever the hell the market bears, and we want to pay them. But also because the city and county of San Francisco tried to take all my staff. In 1 week, we got 5 layoff notices from our LCSWs and MFTs because the county increased their salaries by $20,000. And this was coming out of COVID. They couldn't find any staff, so they increased their salaries by $20,000, and it was like April. And we were pissed because our contracts don't have that kind of money in it, but I had to keep my staff. I lost one of them, but we increased our salaries by $20,000 to match theirs, and the rest of them turned around and stayed. And then we went back to the other social workers, and then we went to everybody else, and we started increasing those salaries, because here's the way it works. And here's what you need to understand about the business of being in nonprofits. Stop treating it like you need to be a nun or you need to be a priest to do this work. We're actually asking you to do the hardest work that needs to be done out here, and we're not even paying you for it. The way nonprofits are set up is that they give nonprofits 75% of the money that it takes you to do your work, and then tell you to go fundraise for the rest of it. They don't do that for PG&E. They don't do that for any of the other providers out there. They pay them, but they're going to give you a little bit of money, like you should get excited, and then you got to fundraise to pay the rest of your contracts. That's some bullshit. I'm just saying. So we don't play that. I told you, I'm a business person. I came from the business side, so we don't do that. You pay us for the services that we provide, and you pay us enough to provide for the staff that we get. So we've got 24/7 services that we provide around the clock. And a lot of those contracts, they say they want behavioral health specialists to come out there. So people are trying to tell me, well, here's an MFT and here's an LCSW. She's going to go out here and do this work. And I'm going to say, really? I tell my staff, so this is a conversation about what? Real talk, real solutions, I tell them to live in the real world. That's what I tell everybody that lives in the real world. So you are not going to find, the city and county of San Francisco needs 6,000 people just to meet the requirements of their city and county, and they can't find it. So how the hell are you going to find it? Are you paying more than they are? You got better benefits than they do and all that stuff? Well, we're trying our damnedest to make sure that we do. We don't have to be that much over them, but we just need to be competitive before we can keep our people. But so my feeling is, and what I did when I'm looking at it, I'm saying I can't win because I can't find workforce. But out of that 204 people that we hired, 41 of them were previously incarcerated. I'm just saying, 41 of them were previously incarcerated. What's amazing is that many of those individuals actually went back and got their masters. Actually, they got out. And they're actually licensed clinical people, some of them. And the rest of them, many of them aren't. But you know what they're not afraid to do? They're not afraid to go into the Tenderloin in San Francisco and deal with drug addicts at midnight. They'll walk in there and they're not even scared. I had clinicians talking about, well, I want to do that work, but who's going to protect me? And I'm going to say, okay, so stop. I'm not going to pay you to go into the jungle and then have somebody come out there and protect you, which only makes sense. I wouldn't want my daughter or my baby going out there and doing that work either, because it's too complicated, it's too hard and all that stuff. But if we live in the real world, then how are we going to get this workforce done? So I'm sitting here saying, take people who aren't afraid to go into that community. And after you serve 15 years in prison, you ain't afraid. You ain't afraid. And then I always tell people the reason why I'm building my Justice Department and all this was our fastest growing division, doing all the work around these people, is that I've never been incarcerated. So what am I supposed to believe about incarceration? What they tell me in the movies? Do people get raped? Do they get stabbed? They get killed? They get gangbanged? Whatever. So I'm going to say, so one of the things that I do is I hire people who've had the experience, who know the truth. Because you know what I found out is that people who go through those kind of experiences, they have to learn how to hustle too and survive. Well, so they'll talk shit to you all the time. You won't know when it's bullshit. You won't know when it's real. My people in the justice side sit there and say, shut up, that's bullshit. and here's what we're going to do, and here's what we're going to do, and here's what we're doing. I'm going to say that's incredible. I have a big department right now of women who've been previously incarcerated, and we're working on that group too. We're building out that capacity as well. So the real truth here is that we're expecting people to come out of incarcerated. And during COVID, they let a lot of people out because the city of Oakland gave us a contract to run the Corps. And the Corps was the group. We are the group that serves with all the people being released from the jails. And we have to connect them to services. And we started that, we got the contract in January 2020 and had to build a workforce during COVID to handle this group of people. But what I realize and what we understand is the reason why we're effective is because the people who we hired to do the work know exactly what they're talking about. So they know what it feels like to have to kind of re-engage with your family after serving 10 years in prison. To re-engage with your children when they don't know you that way. For you to walk around feeling the scars, the internal scars of being abused and traumatized in prison that you can't even talk to anybody about because it doesn't make you feel good. And yet we're acting and asking them to act like normal people in doing this work. And secondarily, we act like they should be happy to be cleaning streets and working for minimum wage. So my goal is to make sure that I treat incarceration like it's a master's degree. So those people get a chance to do the same work that MSTs can do, LCSWs can do in that because they have a master's in incarceration. And it matters in the work that we do. And they're doing the heavy lifting. Next slide. United Council of Human Service, San Francisco, used to be Mother Brown's Kitchen. The county of San Francisco came to us and asked us would we be their fiscal sponsors as of October 1 this year. $13 million organization. They serve between 200 to 400 meals a day. They have about, they have an RV park with 150 RVs in it where they house homeless people in transitional housing. They have a tent city outside of their place where they have another 20 tents where they have people who live in these tents. They have a overnight shelter where people can sleep during the rain and all that stuff, and they work there in the thing. And they've had a history of being unsupported by their fiscal sponsors. They've had a history of having mismanagement concerns. And so the city came to us and asked us, would we take that over and would we do that work? So we're doing that work for them. And what's going to be great is that they do incredible work, and by the time we get through, they're going to have incredible systems because we just onboarded them onto our existing systems. So what I have to say to you is ultimately, our goal is that we can't do all the work. There's no way to do it, and we believe that you are supposed to do it person by person, and you've got to do it so it matters for each person, and we can't do all of that. But what I commit to you to do with Felton Institute, whenever you get a chance, is I will help you make sure that you have the strongest systems. I will make sure that you're supported by HR. When we onboarded 102 staff from UCHS, they came to our new employee orientation just like theirs. And they saw who we were because they saw how rigorous we are in terms of all the trainings and all that stuff. We've done management training for them and support, and they appreciate that too. I want Contessa to stand up. Contessa Tate. Because I didn't give her all that bling around her neck now. She came to us with all that bling around there, but she's going to run our program in Antioch. And what I like about Contessa is that she took the vision that we've held for a long time and then doubled down on it, because we've hired nothing but people from Antioch and Pittsburgh to do this work, 24/7 response. Working for the police department. The police department is overwhelmed because they say they have 10,000 calls a year, whatever it is, and they can't respond to any of them on time. So we're sitting here saying, so why are you trying? Why don't you let us respond to all of the behavioral health calls, and why don't you let us respond to all these other things, and that's what we're doing. So we expect to take over at least 30% of the calls that the police department gets and all that. The important thing is that when the police come out and somebody's having a major behavioral health issue or challenge, or even an emotional challenge with the family or whatever it is, there's nothing that a police officer and or the fire department can do in that moment. They're not trained to sit there and spend 4 hours with this family. They're not trained to spend their time moving you around. They have to make a decision. And they got to do something right now. Arrest, not arrest. 5150 or not 5150. Or that's all they can do. So we've got to understand is that that's a wrong model. So in our model, we're going to engage with those people and we're going to work with them. Now, we're hired to do that response 24/7 every day, around the clock. And when we're not doing it, we're not going to be on our computers playing games. We're going to be in the community, engaging with people in the community. Everybody on our team already is in the community, and we're doing it. But what we can do, and she built an incredible team because we have EMS people, we have MFTs, we have caseworkers, clinical caseworkers, people who were previously incarcerated. All of those are the people who we build out to build out this team of people who are going to engage in the community because they're already in the community. But what's more important is that the contract said this, but here's what Felton's going to do because we're rigorous about what we do. Felton is going to make sure that we follow up with every single person that we engage with because those situations aren't one-time situations. People don't get healed because we come out there and say, you're healed. That's not the way it works. So we're going to follow up with them. And that data that we're going to collect through our systems is going to demonstrate the fact that this is the model that people should use around in the country. You should have people from the community serving people in the community with people who look and act like them in the community. And you should do follow-up work, and you should work with these families to help build. So in my mind, it's a part of my original concept that said my job is to build community. Our job is to strengthen our communities. And that's what I want to support you in doing in your community. That's enough. Is there another slide after that? I'm curious. I'm sure that's enough.